Hildegard Braun-Washington is no longer authorized to self-sign financial transactions. A 72-hour temporary financial protection order is now in effect. Petitioner, Greta Washington. I read the first line out loud, the words nailed to my front door like a verdict. My eyes slid to the bottom. All major disbursements require petitioner approval. My hand stayed on the latch, my palm wet. No knock, no explanation, just a sheet of paper staring me down. I remembered winters I worked extra shifts to keep the heat on, semesters I scraped together tuition, nights I held my feverish child and sang until dawn. All of it now standing next to one cold sentence. I no longer have the right to sign my own name. I wanted this to be a clerical error, but the petitioner's line spelled it plain. Greta Washington, my daughter. The one I raised on coupons and choir rehearsals and a spine straight as a baton. And with a single form, I'd been pushed off stage in my own life, treated like a woman whose own hands must be bound by paperwork. I wiped my palms and inhaled. If a letter can silence me in a few typed lines, then I will answer in my own voice, by reading every word, naming what this truly is, and setting the boundaries I choose. Starting with the paper on my table. Morning comes glassy and thin, the kind that makes every sound feel like it might crack. I stand at the sink and let the water run until it evens out, then shut it off because spending without thinking feels wrong today. The house is quiet in a new way, careful, arranged, like someone tiptoed through and put things back almost where they were. I refuse to repeat the words from the notice. If I give them a voice again, they'll take up a chair at the table and start bossing the room. From across the kitchen, I eye the thermostat and leave it alone. I want my hands steady before I touch anything that tells me no. I make coffee, and the first sip tastes bitter. Not because I brewed it wrong, but because suspicion salts everything. I open my notebook, write today's date, and underline it twice. Then I list what belongs to me, this table, this stove, this rhythm. I add a line for what I see and what I only suspect. The goal isn't to prove I'm right. The goal is to keep a clean line between what happened and what fear wants to add. I tuck the notebook under my palm and feel the paper warm, as if a page can be a small stove. I move from room to room slowly, not hunting for a person, wanting a shift. The mudroom rug holds a diagonal ripple like a heel slid, and then a hand smoothed most of it. The key bowl on the entry table faces its long scratch toward the wall. I leave the scratch showing always so I can find it. The remote rests on the left arm of the chair, even though I put it on the right when I'm done. Maybe I switched hands without thinking, I tell myself, and write maybe in my notebook because maybe is a kind of mercy that keeps a mind from sprinting. The mailbox holds a white envelope, no stamp, no return address, my first name in block letters that try too hard to look neutral. The paper smells like warm copier and a little metal, the scent of offices that forget to open a window. Inside lies a one-page authorization, friendly words wrapped around quiet hooks. My name sits on the signature line in a hand that's almost mine. The crossbar on the H runs smooth and proud. Mine has a hitch from the year I fell on the stairs, a small truth my hand can't stop telling. I pull out a folder that proves I am me. An old church program where I signed in a hurry, a recipe card I wrote for Greta the summer she left for college. The thank you note I dashed off when she sent her first paycheck toward the oil bill. My H's wobbles the same way in all of them. The scar of a hand remembers. I lay the new page beside the old and feel a cold that isn't from the window. Whoever wrote this wanted me to see myself and believe it. Wanting me to believe is different from wanting me to consent. I hold the page to the light. Faint indents appear under my name. Like a ghost signature, coach the living one along. Koenig is the kind of neighbor who notices when a comma wanders and can say so without making you feel foolish. I call her, and she answers on the 6th ring with the sound of a spoon tapping a pot. "Come by," she says. "I'll put eyes on it." She reminds me she's retired, that this isn't official, and I tell her I'm not asking for a stamp. I'm asking for sight. We laugh the soft way women do when we agree to be sensible together. I slide the paper into its envelope, the envelope into a plastic sleeve, and zip my coat like I'm sealing a jar. Outside, the air stings the inside of my nose. Winter does that when it wants you to pay attention. A shallow footprint smudges the bottom step, not mine. The heel is narrower. The tread shows a small bite on the outer edge. It points toward the door, not away. It could be the neighbor cutting through after the plow through a ridge. It could be the meter man. It could be nothing. I take a photo anyway because I would rather feel silly now than foolish later. A man walking a terrier raises 2 fingers. I raise 2 back and tuck suspicion into my pocket like a stone. Koenig's kitchen smells like cinnamon and paper and the kind of lamp that makes you see more than you meant to. She pulls her sleeves over her hands and asks me to set the envelope on the table and wait while the light warms. She slides the page under the lamp and tilts it until the strokes shine. "See the pools at the ends," she says, pointing where ink gathers like puddles on a flat road. "That's a hand lifting and resting, not a natural flow." She traces a line where the font shrinks a hair and the spacing tightens, a seam where a clause might have been nudged in sideways. I ask her to say it plainly so I can carry the words home. "Guided, not natural," she says. "It wants your easy S." She taps the date and says they like to predate, so it looks like you already agreed and forgot. Forgetting makes a better villain than a thief. Heat rises in my neck, not shame exactly, more like the body trying to warn the mind twice. She reminds me again she's offering eyes, not authority, and tells me to keep the sleeve on, to store the page flat, to write down every contact in real ink. I thank her and watch her hands, steady as rulers, fold the lamp's arm down like a benediction. Driving back, the light sharpens until the bare branches look drawn in wire. I park half a block away to see my house from the side, because distance tells truth the front step won't. The living room curtain leaves a small triangle of glass I don't usually leave. I take a photo and make a note to check whether the radiator could move it like that. The side gate hangs on the second latch instead of the first. The second sticks and makes me curse, so I never use it. Inside, the heat lags a degree behind comfort, and my shoulders hunch without asking. I don't call Greta. Anger wants to be first, but today belongs to evidence. I brew tea and burn my tongue a little, and take the sting as a reminder to go slow even when I want to run. When I open the front door to pull in the recycling bin, a small white card slides from the crack and taps my shoe. On the front, my first name only printed cheerfully. On the back, a mobile notary service with a local number and an email made of glued together letters and numbers, no real name at all. "Happy to help make bank issues easy," it says, as if ease were the same thing as safety. I sit at the table and line the card up with the envelope and Koenig's notes, like 3 voices I need to hear and balance. The notice says I need permission to move my own money. The forged form says someone else wants a key to the same door. The card says help is right here, no questions asked. 3 simple offers, none of them simple. I look down the hall where the little clock camera keeps its red eye steady and feel my back straighten, a muscle memory from years of holding a choir together. Somebody expects me to call that number. I rest a fingertip on the card and decide my next question will not be asked on a phone. Morning opens with a fragile light, thin as glass. I let the tap run a moment, then shut it off, a reminder that every choice, even water, carries weight today. The house is quiet in a new way, careful, arranged, like someone tiptoed through and put things back almost where they were. I refuse to repeat the words from the notice. If I give them voice again, they'll take up a chair at the table and start bossing the room. From across the kitchen, I eye the thermostat and leave it alone. I want my hands steady before I touch anything that tells me no. I make coffee and the first sip tastes bitter, not because I brewed it wrong, but because suspicion salts everything. I open my notebook, write today's date, and underline it twice. Then I list what belongs to me. This table, this stove, this rhythm. I add a line for what I see and what I only suspect. The goal isn't to prove I'm right. The goal is to keep a clean line between what happened and what fear wants to add. I tuck the notebook under my palm and feel the paper warm, as if a page can be a small stove. I move from room to room slowly, not hunting for a person, but for a shift. The mudroom rug holds a diagonal ripple, like a heel slid, and then a hand smoothed most of it. The key bowl on the entry table faces its long scratch toward the wall. I leave the scratch showing always, so I can find it. The remote rests on the left arm of the chair, even though I put it on the right when I'm done. Maybe I switched hands without thinking, I tell myself, and write maybe in my notebook, because maybe is a kind of mercy that keeps a mind from sprinting. The mailbox holds a white envelope. No stamp, no return address, my first name in block letters that tried too hard to look neutral. The paper smells like warm copier and a little metal, the scent of offices that forget to open a window. Inside lies a 1-page authorization, friendly words wrapped around quiet hooks. My name sits on the signature line in a hand that's almost mine. The crossbar on the H runs smooth and proud. Mine has a hitch from the year I fell on the stairs, A small truth my hand can't stop telling. I pull out a folder that proves I am me. An old church program where I signed in a hurry, a recipe card I wrote for Greta the summer she left for college, the thank you note I dashed off when she sent her first paycheck toward the oil bill. My H's wobble the same way in all of them. The scar of a hand remembers. I lay the new page beside the old and feel a cold that isn't from the window. Whoever wrote this wanted me to see myself and believe it. Wanting me to believe is different from wanting me to consent. I hold the page to the light. Faint indents appear under my name. Like a ghost signature coach the living one along. Koenig is the kind of neighbor who notices when a comma wanders and can say so without making you feel foolish. I call her, and she answers on the sixth ring with the sound of a spoon tapping a pot. "Come by," she says. "I'll put eyes on it." She reminds me she's retired, that this isn't official, and I tell her I'm not asking for a stamp. I'm asking for sight. We laugh the soft way women do when we agree to be sensible together. I slide the paper into its envelope, the envelope into a plastic sleeve, and zip my coat like I'm sealing a jar. Outside, the air stings the inside of my nose. Winter does that when it wants you to pay attention. A shallow footprint smudges the bottom step, not mine. The heel is narrower, the tread shows a small bite on the outer edge. It points toward the door, not away. It could be the neighbor cutting through after the plow through a ridge. It could be the meter man. It could be nothing. I take a photo anyway because I would rather feel silly now than foolish later. A man walking a terrier raises 2 fingers. I raise 2 back and tuck suspicion into my pocket like a stone. Koenig's kitchen smells like cinnamon and paper and the kind of lamp that makes you see more than you meant to. She pulls her sleeves over her hands and asks me to set the envelope on the table and wait while the light warms. She slides the page under the lamp and tilts it until the strokes shine. "See the pools at the ends," she says, pointing where ink gathers like puddles on a flat road. "That's a hand lifting and resting, not a natural flow." She traces a line where the font shrinks a hair and the spacing tightens, a seam where a clause might have been nudged in sideways. I ask her to say it plainly so I can carry the words home. "Guided, not natural," she says. "It wants your easy yes." She taps the date and says they like to predate, so it looks like you already agreed and forgot. Forgetting makes a better villain than a thief. Heat climbs my neck, not shame exactly, more like the body trying to warn the mind twice. She reminds me again she's offering eyes, not authority, and tells me to keep the sleeve on, to store the page flat, to write down every contact in real ink. I thank her and watch her hands, steady as rulers, fold the lamp's arm down, like a benediction. Driving back, the light sharpens until the bare branches look drawn in wire. I park half a block away to see my house from the side, because distance tells truths the front step won't. The living room curtain leaves a small triangle of glass I don't usually leave. I take a photo and make a note to check whether the radiator could move it like that. The side gate hangs on the second latch instead of the first. The second sticks and makes me curse, so I never use it. Inside, the heat lags a degree behind comfort, and my shoulders hunch without asking. I don't call Greta. Anger wants to be first, but today belongs to evidence. I brew tea and burn my tongue a little and take the sting as a reminder to go slow, even when I want to run. When I open the front door to pull in the recycling bin, a small white card slides from the crack and taps my shoe. On the front, my first name only, printed cheerfully. On the back, a mobile notary service with a local number and an email made of glued together letters and numbers. No real name at all. "Happy to help make bank issues easy," it says, as if ease were the same thing as safety. I sit at the table and line the card up with the envelope and Koenig's note, like 3 voices I need to hear in balance. The notice says I need permission to move my own money. The forged form says someone else wants a key to the same door. The card says help is right here, no questions asked. 3 simple offers, none of them simple. I look down the hall where the little clock camera keeps its red eye steady and feel my back straighten, a muscle memory from years of holding a choir together. Somebody expects me to call that number. I rest a fingertip on the card and decide my next question will not be asked on a phone. Greta texts first, careful, then calls and asks if someone from the bank can come by. Wind rushes on her end. She sounds braced. I say yes if what arrives is an explanation, not another decision made for me. 15 minutes later, the bell chirps twice. Greta stands with a woman in a navy jacket and a badge on a lanyard, a quiet uniform that means forms. We trade names in the entry. Maya from the bank's fraud unit keeps her gloves in her pocket and her eyes on my face. I let them in because refusing answers is not dignity. Choosing how to hear them is. We sit at the kitchen table and I square the salt and pepper to keep my breathing steady. Maya opens a portfolio and slides a page toward me. She says there were 3 overnight pokes at my accounts, a small card authorization that bounced, a trial charge that hit and dropped, and a failed request to change my contact email by 1 extra dot. She points at a simple timeline and uses verbs I understand: tried, blocked, reversed. Greta adds that the pattern triggered an alert and that the temporary order was meant to stall any drain. I hear protection in their mouths and control in my chest. I tell them words travel differently when you tape them to a person's door. Maya nods without offense and says that the door should open and close under the owner's hand. I ask what actually freezes when something is frozen. Maya says they can lock external transfers, new payees and large pulls, while leaving bill pay, pharmacy, and the oil company alone. She suggests a fraud alert with the bureaus. A fresh email used only for bills and a number I can call that routes to a human. Greta starts to apologize for not warning me. I hold up a hand and say, "We can set blame later. Today, we set settings." I have lived long enough to know fear loves speed and clarity hates it. I want every step written in ink I can read when I am alone. We work the list like a hymn we used to sing together. I choose a daily cap that lets me buy food and hire a plumber at midnight if I must. Maya writes the number in block letters and underlines it twice, so it looks like a promise. We mark the clinic and the oil company as always. Allow and add a note for prescription spikes. I say I do not want a blanket freeze. Blankets warm some people and smother others. Maya translates that into toggles without making me feel quaint. Greta offers to sit while I change passwords. I tell her I will do that after lunch by myself with my notebook open. On speaker, the bureau's hold music plinks like a toy organ. I answer identity questions I could recite in my sleep, then say plainly that I want a fraud alert that tells anyone to ask me twice. The representative repeats the phrase back. I hear the smile he cannot type. Greta writes the time and confirmation number in neat block letters, nothing like the forced curves on yesterday's envelope, and I put a small star beside it because memory likes companions. Maya shows me how to forward bank messages to the new bill-only inbox and asks me to read the address backward to catch typos. My tongue trips and then remembers. When the calls end, Maya asks if anyone has been helping with my computer. The word pricks. I say a volunteer from the senior center looked at it last month and likes to make things easier. Easier can mean faster or careless. Sometimes it means a door left on the latch. Greta's eyes move from me to the laptop. She asks for his name. I say it and feel the room tilt a half degree, not heavy, just off. Maya writes it down like a question to visit later and tells me not to install anything or let anyone tune up the system until we finish the cleanup. We log into the bank portal. I type slower when someone watches, so I say that out loud and let the embarrassment leave with the breath. We create a new email that belongs only to bills. I read it forward and backward and then again. We set alerts for withdrawals over a number I chose, the number I could not replace in a month. Greta prints my payee, and I cross out the gym that only sends ads and a magazine I didn't notice had ended. Maya wipes the printer tray, so no stray copy of my address lingers in a machine that isn't mine. When we finish, the room feels a degree warmer without anyone touching the thermostat. Greta asks if I want her to stay. I tell her I need an hour with only my voice in the house. She touches the plastic sleeve holding the questionable form and says, "Keep it flat," echoing Koenig, and for a second I see that mother and daughter can share a line if the ink is clear. Maya thanks me for letting a stranger touch my accounts. I thank her for not treating me like a problem. At the door, Greta says the hearing date is on the notice and that we can go together. I say we'll talk tomorrow. When they're gone, the mail slot claps once and a thin brochure slides in with a sticky note. Call me when you're ready to make things easy. Same number as the card. I hold the note by the corner and wonder how many doors it has learned to find. Today, I decide to stop letting fear narrate and pick up the phone myself. Caleb's number sits in my contacts under Center Handyman, a title that feels too friendly now. I hear his easy hello and tell him my kitchen outlet has been acting up, and I'd like him to take a look. He offers late afternoon and says he'll be in the neighborhood. I say that's fine and hear my voice land steady. The steadiness surprises me and also tells me I'm right to do this on my terms. After I hang up, I set a chair where the wall clock sees the back door and wipe the face with a dish towel so the lens is clear. I tuck the plastic sleeve with that suspect paper into a drawer and leave only innocuous mail on the sideboard. The house breathes like a choir waiting on the downbeat. He shows up in a knit cap and work boots that mark a small wet V on the mat. His smile lands a half beat before his eyes, the kind of timing that makes a person look friendly and a little rehearsed. He asks after my health, though I never told him I fell years ago. I answer and file the question away for later. Caleb sets a canvas tool bag on the floor, and a lemony chemical smell rises, sharper than the soap I use. He keeps his gloves in his back pocket, not on the counter, tidy, practiced. I walk him to the outlet near the back door and say it's been flickering when I plug in the kettle. He nods and squats in a way that says he's done this 100 times for people who thank him with cookies. He glances at the mail tray for a fraction too long, as if counting envelopes without meaning to. He unscrews the plate with his right hand and rolls the screws to the edge of his thumb before dropping them on a folded rag so they don't ping the tile. When the faceplate comes off, he leans close and says whoever installed it did a decent job. He flicks a tester that chirps softly like a bird. He keeps up a calm weather talk about snow moving in next week, then slides the tester back and suggests I could make life easier by centralizing everything password-wise. I tell him I already have a way that works for me. He laughs and says paperwork until it doesn't. The kind of line you toss out to sound wise, and adds that the senior center sometimes brings in a notary to sort out paperwork so folks don't stress. Notary lands with a small clang inside my chest, though my face stays a porch light. I tell him I've got a retired notary neighbor who watches my commas. He says, "That's good," and his mouth holds the smile while his eyes go still. I ask if he wants tea, and he says he can't drink on the job, but thanks me for the offer. He tightens the terminal screws a quarter turn, too firm for my taste, and I note that for later. When he stands, his knees crack and he rubs one with a small wince that looks real. Not every part of a person is a performance. He asks if there is another outlet that's been odd, and I say the one near the desk has a loose face. He follows me down the hall and his gaze skims the family photos. He stops half a second longer on Greta at 17 in her prom dress, the year we argued about curfew and made up over pancakes. He asks to wash his hands and uses the hall bath. I hear water run and a drawer bump. When he returns, he has a faint wet crescent on his sleeve like a splash from the sink. I think about what I keep in that vanity and breathe easier. Bandages, cotton, nothing with numbers. He tugs the second faceplate and recommends a quick tune-up for the laptop while he's here. I tell him I'll schedule that through the bank's tech line since we're adjusting settings after a scare. He shrugs like it's all the same to him and says he's happy to help however I want. On his way out, he pauses at the entry table and taps the corner of the top letter twice, a habit I've seen in cashiers counting bills. He thanks me for calling and says I should ring him if I need help, signing anything confusing, which is an odd pairing of verbs if you ask me. The cap goes back on, the knit pulled snug, and he leaves with the same easy stride he arrived. I watch his back through the glass, the boots making clean prints that narrow toward the heel. I take a photo because the mind edits when the heart speeds up. Inside the outlet plate sits fractionally cocked, not the way it was before. The screws sit just off center, and I don't think my kettle will care, but I do. In the hall bath, the hand towel hangs upside down. I fold it the way I like and stand there with the small victory of a rectangle aligned. I review the footage while the light still matches memory. The clock's view catches his hands, practiced and neat, and that glance at the mail tray and the way his pinky keeps count. It also catches his face open and kind when he notices the prom photo. So I write "not all bad" in my notebook to keep my suspicion from swallowing my fairness. The audio picks up his line about notaries at the center, and when I play it twice, the little pause before "so folks don't stress" returns like a smudge. I freeze a still of his bag, the logo's rubbed off except for 2 letters, a hint of where it might have been bought. Maybe that matters, maybe it's nothing. I save it anyway because keeping it is cheaper than regret. Koenig calls just as I'm labeling the clip. She says she looked at 2 more documents a friend at church sent over after coffee hour, both for older women who swear they never signed the exact version that's on the page. The same odd spacing shows up, the same polite phrases wrapped around a boulder clause shoved in the middle. One is backdated by a week, the other by exactly 30 days. A neat math that makes a person feel like they missed a calendar page. Koenig says eyes, not authority again, and I tell her eyes are what I need most. She asks if I want her here when I talk to anyone official. I tell her yes, then feel the steadiness that comes when two women decide to show up for each other. At the kitchen table, I write a list that isn't about fear, it's about control. I need a lawyer who speaks elder law in a way I can hear without getting lost. I call the number tacked to the church bulletin board, and a calm voice says they can see me tomorrow, late morning. I underline tomorrow and circle late morning and write the address twice so I don't end up at the wrong door. I draft language on a yellow pad. Any power anyone has over me must be conditional, must require a doctor's assessment in person, and must need two signatures I choose. I stop and stare at the page and feel the tiny tremor in my left ring finger quiet. Writing is a way to make a railing where there isn't one yet. Before dusk, I set a plan I can live with. If someone wants me to sign, they can meet me where the cameras aren't mine and the witnesses aren't theirs. The library's bright main table, public as a hymn. I practice reading a line I wrote myself that I will read out loud before any pen touches any line. I pull a ream of cheap paper from the closet because cheap fibers fuzz on the edges when swapped and show fingerprints better. I breathe and decide I will call Caleb back in 2 days with a small request about one more outlet, and this time I will set the frame so nothing important sits within reach except what I want him to see. The room goes lavender for a minute, the way winter does just before night drops, and I close my notebook on a single question that feels like a hinge. If I choose the place and the rules, what does he try next? Greta arrives at dusk, the hour when windows turn to mirrors and you see yourself whether you asked to or not. She knocks softly, though I told her to come in. I hear the apology in her knuckles and decide to answer with a kettle instead of a speech. Steam gives nervous people somewhere to look. She keeps her coat on a beat too long, then folds it over the chair she always chooses, careful like the old days, when she feared wrinkling a recital dress. Daniel isn't with her, which means she wants this to be mother and daughter, not committee. I set down 2 mugs and the good honey because sweetness needs help on nights like this. She says, "I'm sorry," and the words hang weightless until I ask, "Sorry for what exactly?" I need nouns, not fog. She says, "For the door notice, for the timing, for making me feel cut out of my own life." She adds that her job has shown her how fast a pinhole becomes a drain, how a $10 poke turns into a mortgage gone if nobody moves. I hear the banker in the rhythm and the daughter in the brakes. I say fear is not a hall pass. Fear is a signal to slow and speak. She nods and wraps both hands around the mug the way she did at 12, gathering heat she cannot make herself. I pull a yellow pad and draw a line down the middle. What I need to feel safe, what you need to feel calm. I say I need notice before any step touches my name, unless we agree it's a true emergency. I need reasons in plain words. I need a time limit stamped on the front. I say I need a path to say no without being called confused, and a way to say yes without handing over every key on the ring. She says she needs to know if I don't pick up. Nothing essential will fall apart. She needs authority to pause a drain quickly and unwind it. She needs proof I'm not alone with someone who sells solutions. I write while the kettle's tiny clicks keep us from rushing, and the page becomes a room where both of us can breathe. I offer a family rule we can sign and hang where we can see it. Announce, explain, expire, review. If a pause must happen, pharmacy, heat, mortgage, and groceries keep moving. Life support does not ride the brake. Any decision made in fear gets reviewed in the first morning light that follows. We add a call tree so she and Daniel do not hammer the same door while I'm in the shower. I insist on a way back to normal that both of us can touch, a visible switch with dates attached. She exhales and says the choir director voice still makes her sit up. I answer that posture keeps breath moving and breath keeps messes from pretending to be emergencies. Her smile is small and honest, the kind that reaches the eyes even when they're wet. We talk about power the way you talk about knives, useful sharp, not a toy. I say I will accept a health power that turns on only if a doctor who looked me in the eye that day writes that I cannot decide. Not last week, not someday that day. Any financial step beyond my daily living requires 2 keys I choose. She may be one key if Koenig is the other, or the reverse if the day demands it. She starts to argue for speed, and I raise a finger. Speed cut me out. Speed will not be the tool we reach for first. She rubs the bridge of her nose, then laughs when I tilt my head like I do with altos who rush a phrase. Music shows up even here. Count and breathe, then enter. I rewrite the notes as full sentences. Notice must come first. Reason must be named. Limits must be printed. Essentials must flow. Two keys, doctor today, reversible. We agree to read the sheet out loud once a month, even if nothing hurts, because practice keeps the muscle warm. I tell her a copy will live with the church office, not to tattle, but to make witnesses out of paper and people who love us. She offers to run the language by someone at work. I say no bank speaks for this house, only we do. A loose strand slips from her bun. She blows it away and grins like the kid who once cried because tape stuck to her fingers. We both laugh and the room's shoulders drop. We turn to the hearing and set chairs in our minds. I will speak for myself. She will sit to my right and pass water, not words. Daniel can attend if we need a steady breath counter. I say I'm not angry at her work. I'm angry at the part of her that handled me instead of helping me. That part needs a different job. She nods and says, handling is for boxes, not mothers. I write 2 small calendar squares on the fridge. Money check-in, life check-in. We agree laptops stay closed unless invited. Rules are only real if they make it to the wall. As she stands to leave, she hesitates with one sleeve half on and says she's seen the same cheerful notary card tucked in 2 more door frames this week. She asks if I can help the bank map where they appear without stepping into something sharp. The request slips into the room like a note in my range. I say I'll keep a small ledger, address, time, detail that sticks, and hand it to her on the porch with the tea still hot. She calls that perfect and admits she's proud of how I held my ground without swinging. When the door closes, I copy our rule sheet in my neatest hand, tape it on the fridge, and circle the word reversible twice. The paper doesn't feel like handcuffs anymore. It feels like a railing I chose. Greta asks to meet somewhere neutral. We pick the diner that smells like butter and coffee and years that behave themselves. She slides into the booth with a folder and the look she wore before recitals, breath held so the music wouldn't spill. I say I want truth, not a performance. She opens the folder, 3 tiny charges that blinked and died, an email shift by 1 dot, a password reset request at 2 a.m. She says those moves scout the fence, then press the loosest slat. I wrap both hands around the mug and let heat tell my heart there is time. Speed helps thieves. Speech helps families. She tells me something she owes me. At 22, she fell for a polished verification lie that skimmed $10 from an old man. She caught it fast, but the shame lasted longer than common sense. Ever since, certain words ring like smoke alarms. Help, easy, urgent, and she overcorrects toward action. I see the girl who practiced exact bus fare and thank you in the mirror so adults would take her seriously. I tell her I understand why she moved fast. I also need love that narrates, not love that reports after the fact. She nods and taps the folder like a metronome, finding the downbeat we both can hear. Maya arrives with red pencil circles on 2 pages. A pattern is blooming across town. Cheerful cards tucked in door frames. Friendly witnesses. Forms that look neighborly until the middle paragraph grows a hidden pocket. Dates land 1 week behind or 30 days ahead to make memory take the blame. Some helpers drift through senior centers offering tune-ups and signatures. Some are kind, some are salesmen dressed as nephews. Caller IDs repeat, return calls land nowhere. I feel the old heat rise, then steady when Maya lays out a clean map. A map gives your feet a job. I say I won't be bait. I will be a witness under my own light. Koenig joins because sturdy pie is her religion and honesty is her hobby. She admits last year she almost stamped a page for a woman who smiled too hard, then caught the tremor that means someone is agreeing to end a fight they haven't named. She read the page aloud. The woman cried. The stamp stayed put. Koenig keeps 2 rules now. She won't stamp what she hasn't heard, and she won't hear what a signer can't repeat in their own words. Her confession makes the plan land on soil we can trust. Imperfect people draw better lines. We decide any paper with my name hears my voice first. I draft a mock authorization that looks ordinary at a glance but carries a sentence only my hand can write. Valid only if a doctor who examined me today states I cannot decide and 2 people I choose sign together. The sentence sits in the pocket where scammers hide their knives. It is our watermark. Maya documents the draft as a training sample, not live. Greta logs the route and keeps her hands off my pen. If men behind the cards are fishing, we let them see a gleam and measure how they bite. I choose the library's bright window table. Fluorescent honesty lives there. Rules, no pens except mine, no copies I can't watch, no photos of my ID unless the librarian stands beside me. Maya's team will be 2 car lengths away. If I say our phrase, they'll come without sirens. The phrase must be something I'd never say by accident. I pick, I'll need to warm up my voice. Greta will wait in the stacks within sight, not at my elbow. Koenig will sit nearby with a paperback and mince like a weekday. Back home, I practice the opening until it stops tasting like fear. I print 2 copies. The second carries a microscopic dot in the lower margin that only I can find, proof against claims the page changed. I lay out the ID I will show and the cards I will not. I choose flats that don't squeak and a cardigan with deep pockets where hands can rest. The librarian reserves the table with travel guides no one wants in February. I press the sentence into my palm until the ink smudges and feel my handwriting steady the room. Just after noon, a text lands from a number that looks local and reads stitched together. Heard you're sorting bank issues. Happy to meet anywhere convenient. Can bring a friendly witness if you don't have one. Loneliness is a tool. They know it. I do not answer. 10 minutes later, an email suggests the library at 3 as if the afternoon picked us both. I stand at the window and watch a crow hop the fence. Patient and certain bread appears if you stare long enough. I forward the note to Greta, Maya, and Koenig, then put the phone face down. I write 1 word on a sticky and stick it to the inside of my wrist where only I can see it. Ready. The library smells like paper and lemon cleaner, clean enough to steady my breathing. I claim the window table and flatten my draft until the grain beneath my wrists feels like rails. The travel guides the librarian stacked make a quiet wall that says reserved without a sign. Greta texts she's inside. I picture her in the stacks counting my breaths from a distance. Koenig sits 2 tables away with a paperback. The librarian parks a cart near the reference desk, our small landmark. I touch the sentence I wrote by hand, the one that keeps my name mine, and let my shoulders settle. At 3, a man in a cardigan steps from the lobby with an attaché and a smile that arrives before his eyes. He calls himself a mobile notary and lays out a stamp pad and pen case like silver. Another man hangs back half a step, agreeable and watchful. The notary's voice is even, edges sanded to fit any room. He offers to summarize to save time. I tell him I don't buy time on sale. He asks to see identification. I set my license beside a sticky that reads no photos without my yes. We start at the top. I read the title, the date, then the line I wrote in my hand. Valid only if a doctor who examined me today states I cannot decide and 2 people I choose sign together. His pen clicks to cover the half beat where his eye catches today. He calls it fine and gestures toward the signature block with a magician's flourish. The helper taps a paragraph where the font tightens and spacing grows greedy. He calls it a small clarification to prevent delay. I place my finger on my sentence and read it again so the air can learn it. He pivots to charm with a story about a refinance in a snowstorm, but his thumb keeps squaring pages like he worships edges more than truth. The helper's phone lights. He kills the screen too fast. I ask the notary to read my line aloud, every word, including today. He stumbles on it, just enough for the mask to catch. The librarian sets a book on the cart with a soft thud. Our cue. I say the phrase we chose. Warm and even. I'll need to warm up my voice. The cart rolls away without hurry, and somewhere behind gardening, Greta stops pretending to read. The notary suggests a quieter corner, which is odd because the room already holds its breath. I stay seated and ask for business cards. He produces a generic rectangle with the cheerful number from my door frame and an email made of glued letters. The helper taps twice, leaving a crescent of ink. Koenig touches her mint tin and lets it rest. The notary lifts his stamp pad, then sets it down when he notices the librarian watching the copier glass like a lifeguard. I ask him to read the clarification out loud. He calls it boilerplate and says folks appreciate ease. I tell him I'm here for clear. 2 men in plain coats fold their newspapers and stand like they remembered the same appointment. They cross the carpet without hurrying and ask for identification. The helper raises a hand to block their sight line, then drops it like it burned. The notary says his wallet is in his car. A poor answer in a room full of statements. Maya appears behind them, present like a metronome. She asks if any photos were taken of my license. The librarian answers with a small shake. Greta edges into view within sight, not at my elbow. They separate the 2 men to lobby chairs and ask simple questions. Full names, business registration, last client, where they keep logs. The answer's not. A plain coat lifts the stamp pad with 2 careful fingers. Koenig slides a mint across the table, and I laugh once because that is exactly what she would do. Anywhere nerves sit down. I am not a statue. I am a witness. When Maya asks, I speak my condition into her recorder. Clean and precise. Today pronounced like a door that must open now. The librarian writes the time on a sticky and anchors it to the notary's card. Outside, thin snow shines like paper on a windowsill. Maya says she'll call with next steps and asks me to keep the ledger. Dates, places, small details that grow large in a row. I nod and zip my coat, not because I'm cold, but because hands like work after they shake. Greta walks me to the car without speeches. We sit with the engine off, palms on our knees, counting separate, necessary things. She says more homes called while we were at the table. The same cheerful offer lived in their door jambs. I trade the map in my head for faces and tell her the next step belongs to daylight. When I start the car, the wheel meets my hands exactly where I expect. I drive away slow, letting my pulse catch up to the fact that I stayed seated and used my own voice. In the rear view, the library shrinks to brick, but the room travels with me. The card, the quiet signal, the sentence in my hand. At the first light, I say the words again to nobody, valid only if a doctor today and 2 people I choose. They land like a key fitting, not forced. I think about how easily a promise can be hidden inside friendliness, how quickly a signature can be borrowed if no one pauses. The wheel warms under my palms. I match its heat with my own and keep driving toward daylight. Ledger on the seat, phone face down, breath steady enough to count. Morning opens quiet enough for a roll call. I check the modem, the thermostat, the smoke alarm, replacing anything that remembers a stranger with something I chose. The text speaks in plain toggles. I test the alerts and write what changed and why. By noon, the kitchen hums in my key, and I hang my coat on hook 2, like a small pledge I can keep. The hearing lands midweek. I wear a jacket with pockets and carry a pen that glides. Greta stands to my right, not in front. When the clerk calls my name, I answer first. The doctor who saw me today says I understand. I decide. I choose. I speak my condition into the record, valid only if a doctor today and 2 people I choose, and feel the room exhale. The temporary order folds and leaves. I pocket my pen like I signed what already was mine, and we walk out under pewter skylighter by the weight of paper that no longer names me. On the steps we choose quiet and sit on the low wall with our palms warming stone. I tell her I will not rebuild week 1 all winter. I will use what it taught me about doors and names. We walk the long way home, buy 2 rolls, and read the court note at my table. I sign only where my name is asked to be. Greta circles rule night on the fridge calendar, taps hook 2 with a smile, and leaves me to my breath. In the afternoon, I meet an attorney who listens without rushing. We keep the will plain. My house stays mine while I breathe. Savings go first to the community choir, then to the helper who shows up with kindness and no clipboard. We add a clause that any health choice needs a doctor's same-day assessment and 2 signatures I choose. The attorney suggests a modest thank you line, so gratitude has a drawer. I initial slowly to witness myself agreeing, the pen cap clicking like a lid settling safe. Back home, a stiff envelope sits under the clock where I can see it without reading. I make tea and hold the mug with both hands until heat steadies thought. The days after are for finishing what fear started and abandoned. I make a first-week ritual. Check the detector, check the oil, check the alerts, label leftovers I will forget. I add a calendar square called Talk, the night Greta and I read the rule sheet out loud. We retire, make it easy, and accept only make it clear. Daniel fixes the cabinet hinge. A new pencil cup by the phone means a ready pen beats a ready panic. Maya calls with a brief that sounds like wind down after storm. The men from the library face paperwork heavier than mine. She thanks me for not turning to stone and asks me to keep the ledger exact. Dates, places, who else saw what I saw. I show her a new column called Witness. She laughs and asks for royalties and batteries. In the quiet after court, I give the house a new script. I label a folder, start here, and slide in copies of the rule sheet, the doctor clause, and a list of numbers that reach a human. On the fridge, I tape a card that says, ask twice. Answer slow. It looks simple and costs nothing. Greta and I try our first talk night without fixing anything. We just read the page and breathe on purpose. When the attorney sends clean copies, I sit at the table alone and read every line out loud, because hearing catches what eyes excuse. I hear myself say, my house stays mine, and feel a knot I didn't name loosen under my ribs. For the workshop, I fold handouts in front of the television with the sound off, and imagine each pair of hands receiving paper that does not rush them. I add a line to the plan that wasn't there before. Bring someone who will say your sentence with you when you forget. We underline reversible once, together, tonight. Sunday's bulletin carries a line that finds me, your signature, your voice. I say yes if we skip scare stories and give people pens that feel good in the hand. I will ask them to read forms out loud, circle the sentence that tries to slip past meaning, and write one condition in the middle of any page with their name. I print a short stack and place the tin of spare pens by the door. The house settles for the night and every sound returns to what it is. I turn off the kitchen light with my name steady on my tongue, a word I no longer have to defend to keep. Sunday afternoon tastes like citrus and steam. I set out a row of pens on the library's long table and watch people choose them the way they choose pews, careful, hopeful. I tell them this isn't a scare class. It's practice for using our own voices without apology. We read a sample form, and each person writes a single condition in the center of any page with their name. The room learns to stop whenever a sentence slides past meaning. I feel ease return to spines that have been carrying other people's confidence too long. The librarian thanks me at the door. A woman admits she used to sign fast so she wouldn't seem difficult. I tell her difficult is often what they call women who read slowly. She nods like a hinge oiled at last. Outside, late winter light makes even dirty snow look honest. I walk home counting what I can control without gripping. My breath, my pace, whether I answer a knock. Greta and Daniel arrive with roasted chicken and rosemary. While Daniel slices, Greta pins the ledger back on the fridge and updates a line I forgot. We eat simply and let quiet breathe. She says the bank changed an alert because of a note I wrote. I asked to read it later and taste food while hot. After dishes, we sit with the good blanket and talk forgiveness. I say forgiveness isn't a switch, it's thaw. Uneven, honest about where the sun doesn't land yet. She asks for warning when the cold returns. I promise, and my chest chooses a slower tempo. By midweek, I am back with the choir. I lift my hands and a hush lands, earned, not requested. I ask each section to speak one word before we sing. Altos choose steady, tenors choose soft, basses choose listen. During break, Mr. Wallace shows me a cheerful card that offers to fix everything. I ask him what the card asks of him. He reads twice, frowns at the missing name, and tears it neatly down the middle. Sometimes the smallest proof is the one a person gives himself. At home, I open a box of notes to myself. I write a new one. If fear shows up wearing paperwork, you do not have to pour it tea. I tape it inside the spice cupboard where I will see it even on easy days. The house settles, ticks, sighs, ordinary sounds that mean themselves. I set my phone face down and leave the pen uncapped so tomorrow won't have to hunt for it. A neighbor knocks with a letter her aunt received that feels off. We spread it on my table, two women with winter-sharpened eyes. The demand hides in the middle, just where they like to hide pockets. We circle it and write no beside it. She asks how I learned to talk this way. I say I practiced on hard days and kept practicing when they got easier because ease forgets and practice remembers. She promises cinnamon rolls for the next session. I promise to make people read out loud. I add a star to the ledger where community happened on purpose. That evening, the church thanks small helpers. I stand when they call my name, accept a thin certificate and a grocery card, and sit back down smiling at how ordinary grace looks. The applause is warm and brief, the right size. I do not feel heroic. I feel like a woman who finally learned to keep her own hand on her own name. At my door, I pause. Not out of fear, but to notice the yes of the lock I chose. I turn the key and the house answers with its usual clicks and sighs. Nothing coded, nothing secret. I say my name into the quiet and hear it return. Steady and unborrowed, a note the choir can hold without strain. In the end, the lesson was simple and hard at the same time. Protection without consent is control, and a signature only means something when your voice stands behind it. I am Hilda Braun-Washington, 72 years old, and I learned to put conditions in the middle of every promise, and to read every line out loud until it sounds like me. The forms didn't give me my dignity back. Choosing my boundaries did. Love is not hurrying someone out of the way. Love is slowing down long enough to let them choose. If Hilda's journey moved you, tap like and subscribe so more people can find stories that protect their voice. Drop a comment below. Tell us about a moment when you set a boundary and it changed everything, or the line you'd write in the middle of any document with your name on it. Your perspective might be the light someone else needs tonight. Here's my question for you. When safety and freedom pull in opposite directions, what's one rule you'd keep to honor both? Thank you for spending this time with us. Your stories, your boundaries, your voices, they matter here. Until next time, take a slow breath, trust your pace, and keep your name in your own mouth.